and warned. Of course, post-election violence victims accused President William Ruto of taking away property given to them by Mwai Kibaki. That is a story on page 4 of the People Daily. Another story making headlines here is governors. We were duped to sign medical equipment deal. This is a story on page 5. And phone flashing threatens the future of BNPL sector. That is a story on page 19 of Matters Business. Modern Family story on page 17. I fell into alcoholism while an evangelist. That is also a story on the People Daily. A new EACC chief picks war with DPP. That is a story on page 2 of the People Daily. And of course, the vetting of the new EACC chief was done yesterday in the National Assembly. Now, Amorim's biggest test as Arsenal face United. That is a story on page 32 on Matters Sports. Let's take a look at what you're waking up to as far as the Standard newspaper is concerned. Top story on the Standard newspaper says hidden charges in jobs deal arc the youth. Now, behind the smiles and camera flashes, Kenyans are feeling disillusioned by the recent jobs recruitment exercise, whose face is Labour CS Alfred Mutua. What they were promised is not what is being delivered, with agencies asking for up to 120,000 and not being told where they will be working in spite of having employment letters. Of course, that is a story on the Standard newspaper, top story on the Standard newspaper. And why do you oppose everything? That is President William Ruto, of course, yesterday. You're going to be getting into the details of that. Another story making headlines in the Standard is grabbers give Nakuru dead restless nights. Now, this is a story on page 19. And Baraza put on the spot over shift rollout. Now, Health Cabinet Secretary was confronted by hard questions over what has been a chaotic switch from NHIF to shift and tragic realities of the healthcare system. That is a story on page 6 of the Standard. On Matters, now on the national page, of course, a story that we just done this morning is floods. Death toll hits 12,000, others displaced. That is a story on page 3 of the Standard. Don't close boarding schools. On Matters County, it's a story on page 22. And Biden kicks off 2-day Angola tour. Matters World page, story on page 19. On Matters Sports, the Standard is reporting that why Shujaa face uphill task in page 17 of the Standard. Let's take a look at what you're waking up to on the Daily Nation. An election time bomb. Now, it's less than 3 years to the 2027 elections, general elections, but Kenya's poll agency is still in limbo without commissioners who will have set in motion key electoral processes, some of which are required to be conducted long before the ballot. And with a simmering dispute over the composition of the IEBC's election panel, further delaying the naming of the team, the country is courting a disaster. This is a story on page 3, 4, and 5 of the Daily Nation. Now, doctors now issue a fresh strike notice. Of course, a 21 strike notice has been issued by doctors. A story on the Daily Nation, of course. And I want us to start on this particular front to try and make sense of this election time bomb. IEBC is way past the deadlines when it comes to boundaries delimitation. What the nation is reporting, we're actually looking at a crisis in the coming days. How did we get to this particular point? Let me start with you, Fred.
Thank you. I think it is clear that we are way past the constitutional deadline as provided for in Article 89 of the COK 2010 that demands that within a period of 8 to 12 years, we should be reviewing the boundaries of our constituencies and wards to conform to what we call population quota, the population within the electoral units. And it is also clear that there have been attempts to reconstitute the commission. And every time after election in this country, it is strange that we must reconstitute our electoral body. That is very interesting. However, this is where we are. If you go through the recommendation of the NADCO report, you will realize that there were cogent propositions on how to move forward. I wish that this report is fully implemented so that we get out of this mess.
Okay.
Because the report even recommended that now that we are almost past, at that time, the constitutional deadline, then Parliament had the opportunity to extend the timeline so that this issue of Article 89 is done, is addressed. Okay. Number two, the electoral system in this country is always in doubt because we have got trust deficits. When politicians compete, they compete, but listen, they compete and they don't trust each other. That's fair enough. But why is it that we have got laws that govern elections?
Okay.
We have got individuals that are recruited on the basis of suitability and competency to govern our elections. And then we have people that believe that when they go to the election, the results will reflect their will.
Okay.
Then we still have contest. So the general principle of electoral system of accountability, transparency, you know, all these issues must be complied with at least earlier before the election. Today, as we prepare for, you know, whatever we want to do, we must be alive to the fact that elections will come. And what do we need to do now? I think it is in the interest of this country to ensure that we have the selection panel, first of all, in place. We are aware that all the nominating bodies, following the amendment of the IBC Act, the minority party, majority party, the party other than that in Parliament, LSK, Interreligious Council, and the representative of the Parliamentary Service Commission from both minority and majority party have all nominated. But there is a group that went to court and filed a petition claiming that they were excluded. And the court has to listen to them. So that is where we are today. So what we would encourage is that the court should fast track the hearing and determination of this matter so that in the soonest time possible, we have a selection panel in place that is going to bring men and women who are competent enough to oversee the next general election.
Trust deficit you mentioned, but even from this particular onset that, you know, we have a case in court that some people feel like they were actually left out as far as this particular process is concerned. Already, even in the selection panel itself, in just constituting that selection panel, already this trust issue is coming to life. Let me come to you, Dr. Mark. How do we then get to, you know, deal with the issue of trust as far as elections are concerned? Because this time round, we try to, you know, come at it early enough, but seems that we are not doing well as far as that front is concerned, because looking at the timelines, we are already past that.
Brian, when is that Man U and Arsenal game? you will realize that, you know, Kenyans get excited about the games than they do about politics in the sense of actually trusting. We trust the referees that man the Premier League games as opposed to trusting the institutions that we have. But whose interest is being served here with the IBC limbo? Because this is a country whereby if we want something done, we can get it done so long as the interest of the movers is served. How long did it take us to get the deputy president out of office? And that is one of the most difficult things, something that we've never done.
There's lack of political goodwill when it comes to actually, you know, dealing with this.
It's lack of goodwill and lack of good manners and lack of respect to the law and all of that kind of stuff. Because you remember there's a constituency, even before I get to the core of your question, remember there's a constituency that doesn't have a member of parliament to date.
There are actually two.
Two. Yeah. So do not have a member of parliament to date. Why? Because IBC is not constitution. And I'm wondering, they should have gone to court by now. The members of those constituencies should have gone to court to actually compel representation, because for 3 years now, they have not had representation, which is actually their right. And I'm even wondering, do they even get their CDF? Do they even get their services? So in Kenya, where did the rain start beating us, and why we don't have trust? It's because politics, and largely so, is about interest. So if my interest is not being served now, whether IBC is on or off, it doesn't matter. If I was in a position of authority and I know that I need IBC to do ABC, that's an interesting one. If I need IBC to do ABC, I would get it done. IBC would be in place in a matter of days, not even weeks. Okay. So what, Brian, we should be looking at is that whose interest is being served by lack of a properly constituted IBC. That is what we need to look at. Okay. And I gave you an example of when we wanted the DP out, it took us a few days. Okay. Even through the courts. Actually, even through the courts. And so we don't even trust the courts. Okay. Would you, because if you want the courts to do what you want to get done within the period that you want to get it done, it will be done. Okay.
Let me come to you, Fred, because talking about constituencies and also wards, and we have 3 constituencies, that is Banisa, Magarini, and Ugunja. We are talking about the reviewing of boundaries. By-elections should have been conducted in these particular constituencies and also these particular wards. That has not yet happened. What risk are we looking at in the coming days as far as the electoral process is concerned?
I think already we are into that risk. There's no other risk that we are looking at. We're already there. When a member of parliament, when a constituency lacks a member of parliament, it means the functions of that member of parliament, as provided for in Article 94, are not adequately provided to those members of the public because there is absence of a leader. And that's why Dr. Mark Matunga is asking, he doesn't even know whether they receive CDF. And if they do, who administers that? Of course, they could be receiving because CDF nowadays, the management is different. But there must be a leader that addresses issues of concern, resolve and addresses issues of concern to the people of Banisa, to the people of the other constituencies that you're mentioning. That is not there. That person should be on the floor articulating issues of concern to those people. So there's a risk there. It means these people already are excluded from that discussion. If it was an issue of revenue allocation, they're excluded. If it was an issue of discussing the developmental plans in that area, they're excluded. Now, I tend to think that in such instances, there's what we call extra legal measures that are needed. I've given an example, fast-tracking any legal impediment that is stopping the reconstitution of IEBC, because this is an issue of national interest. We are going to have an election. The timelines must be complied with, irrespective of whether we have not had a commission for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. However, we must also look at the integrity of the product of that election. The integrity of the product of an election is tied to the people that are going to be put in office to secure and deliver that election. We don't have those people. How are they going to prepare? They have to continuous registration of voters. They have to ensure that they do policies that conform with the requirements of the law. We have to ensure that we have a team in place that review the previous election and do a report and say this is where there were issues, and going forward we are going to perfect so that we have an election that is almost perfect. So the risks are numerous. However, I am persuaded that we can still have a way forward.
Okay.
If the matter before the learned judges is expedited, it is heard and determined, because the issue of exclusion has been identified, according to the petitioner, at the selection panel level. It is not at the commissioner's level.
Okay.
So it's an issue that you just need to rework on. But remember, there is an act of parliament that has been passed. And that act says the minority party shall nominate a panelist.
Okay.
And just listen, a panelist. And in doing so, all the nominating bodies shall adhere to the 2/3 gender principle. So that is the key word there. Then that is applicable to only nominating bodies that are nominating more than one individual. But I am made to understand, I've not looked at the petition, but I'm made to understand that the people who have gone to court could be people with disability. If you look at the act, it doesn't mention anything of inclusion of PWD.
Okay.
However, the Constitution gives us the provisions that in any undertaking, the people living with disability should be included. So the judges will have to deal with that issue. But finally, as I finish on this issue, I want to encourage the people of Kenya, the politicians ourselves, and professionals ourselves, and experts, to get into a conversation that will offer solution to problems that we are facing as a country.
All right.
It is only until then that we can have tangible issues that we can address and solutions that are implementable. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just be speaking, it bounces on a wall and back. You know, Kenyans have even forgotten that Banisa don't have a member of parliament, and they're moving on. They're moving on.
How do we move on that quickly when on issues that are very pressing most of the time and only appear when sometimes you go back into retrospection and try to figure out why exactly is this happening? Then that's when you realize, by the way, there's a problem somewhere. There's one thing that we did not solve. Why don't we go step by step when it comes to dealing with most of the issues that are actually affecting the country?
Brian, the answer is simple, and it's one word: leadership. If we have leadership in the areas that we are keen on, we would get things done. And I'll refer to this instance, this process many times. I don't know where the courts were and where the judges were within a period of 4 or 5 days that they were able to deal with 19 petitions brought to them by the Gachagua team. 19 petitions. Actually, they ended up being 24 within a record time. And this was a matter involving an individual. But how about matters involving 54 million Kenyans? That even the matters that were brought to court by the PWDs on the IBC situation, are you sure that if the courts wanted to actually expedite this, that they could not? Just one particular small issue, while they were able to actually dispense with 24 petitions within a period of 2 weeks.
So the agency there is not there.
I mean, it's not there. There's no goodwill. Right. There is no interest. I mean, so it doesn't matter if, and the reason I say leadership, my president, Dr. William Ruto, who I support, I think in this area, if he wanted to sort this out, he can.
All right.
If he decides to actually apply sufficient interest, sufficient vigor to get this sorted out, I can. Remember, there's a time he even said, I think in Western Kenya, that you either Mambo Matatu. I mean, if you decide to actually apply Mambo Matatu, it can be done. Okay. And so I asked him and call on him to actually take leadership on this.
All right.
and make it happen. I mean, today, if Raila Odinga, who I voted for, and who we all respect in Kenya, decides to actually give a press statement that IBC must be in place within the next 2 weeks, I can tell you it will happen. Because you'll see my brother here and myself going to the street. It'll happen. So it's about leadership, and it goes back to what interest this scenario serves the leadership.
So looking at the interest that it serves the political class, that's what will determine whether we're actually going to have the reconstitution.
Absolutely.
Within a short time or not.
Remember, Parliament at one point went into a session at 6 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. And decided on a matter.
I want us to take before I take a break, what the Standard is reporting, and these are hidden charges in jobs deal ARC Youth. Now, behind the smiles and camera flashes, Kenyans are feeling disillusioned by the recent jobs recruitment exercise, whose face is Labour CS Alfred Mutua. What they were promised is not what is being delivered, with agencies asking for up to 120,000 and not being told where they will be working in spite of having employment letters. Of course, a story on page 4. And issues of employment in the country, it's a very hot subject, especially when it comes to matters of the youth, that to some extent we have to advertise jobs outside the country, to start the recruitment process and all that. And yet, still, we get to experience this. Let me start with you, Fred. Employment.
Let me tell you, Bran, I have always been a critic of any attempt to take our young people to go and work outside. But I'm a supporter of investors coming on board to create opportunities home so that the money remains here. I want you to give me just 5 minutes or 3 to explain to you why this is important. You live in this country, and this issue of exporting labor, young people have been promised. Today you are being told there's a hidden charge of 120,000. We don't know about it, but I want to believe it is not true. I want to believe. If it is true, then it's unfortunate. The president has said more than once that he would want investors to come on board to create opportunities for our young people, to create opportunity for socioeconomic development. And that's why just recently, when he was in Taita Taveta, the launch of DevKey, and he said he's not a shareholder, he's not a business partner, but he believes that when you do such investment, you shall be creating opportunity for these people, and particularly most of the young people. But I want to give you a recent example of some of the industries that would actually absorb numerous young people to return them here and work. And that industry has been projected as one of the areas that has advanced the economic growth of this country in the construction industry. That is Bamburi Cement. These are issues that are on the website, and you can use them as a case study of Bamburi. Bamburi Cement takeover is due by tomorrow.
On the 5th of December.
5th of December. Yeah. It has been having, Bamburi Cement has been having mismanagement. And there are investors who have come on board to ensure that they want to revive it so that it creates employment for the young people, it creates employment for the old, it offers economic growth for this country. And the shareholders are having a choice to make between an investor called Amsons and another, I think, called Savannah Clinker. But let me give you what is called transaction comparative advantage, so that the shareholders can see how they can create employment for these young people, so that we don't read these headlines that people want to go outside the country and they don't have money and they're being told to pay these. Number one, if the industry creates over 20,000 jobs every month, construction industry, particularly the cement, then there is an investor who has proven that that is possible. If there is profit orientation, there is an investor, for example, Amson, who has proven that they have done that before.
We'll just avoid mentioning names kindly.
Okay. There's an investor who has proven that they can actually do, they can demonstrate profit orientation in their previous undertakings. And financial undertaking also. Is there an investor, I can mention Adani because it is public knowledge. The Adani issue, people did not know who is Adani, what have they done before, and where have they been doing this. Even though there are testimonials that they have done better somewhere, but Kenyans said no. Look, the president said they should have been allowed, but Kenyans rejected. The president ceded. Now, in this issue of cement manufacturing, for example, are there people that are able to have credible information about them that the Kenyan public can believe that if they come on board, they create jobs in numbers to absorb these people? Number two, post-investment opportunities. Are there investors in this country that when they come to the cement industry, I'm using a Bamburi because these are people, everyone knows it. When they invest there, they can put over $400 billion, for example, to create jobs. Because what I'm telling you, Bran, is what we are lacking in this country is opportunity to invest willingly and allow young people to take the jobs opportunities that are created so that they don't go outside. I'm using this as a case study because we have seen that majority of the young people don't have jobs. Politicians say every time that when we get into office, we are going to create this number of jobs. We are going to do this. Why is it that when it comes to investment, and we have seen the cement industry is one of the industries that is growing because every day you wake up here, you see construction, buildings coming up. Why is it that this cement industry, we cannot allow investors that are credible, that are putting investment?
So in terms of credibility, what are we supposed to be looking at? Because you've mentioned Adani, you know, we're talking about people coming into the country to try and invest in different sectors. What are we supposed to be looking at when we are assessing whether somebody is going to be offering employment to our youth in a proper way so that we don't get to be doing the headlines that you're actually talking about?
To summarize it so that I give my good brother here an opportunity to contribute, we are looking at post-buy investment. The post-buy investment of an investor is what demonstrates how much jobs they can create to the country or to the region. Post-buy investment, I'll give an example. If you are an investor who is putting post-buy investment of, let's say, $400 billion in a cement industry, for example, you can be sure that there's sustainability. You can be sure that that person in Africa, in the region, in the world, has demonstrated elsewhere that he can do that. You can be sure that that's somebody who can do CSR in that region. You can be sure that that person is believable. And we are saying, as the people of Kenya and independent thinkers, we would want to see more jobs created in this country so that our people don't go outside, so that our people are not told to pay 120,000, so that our young people are not told, when you go there, you have to look for your accommodation. Work in the country, put that money in the country, invest in your country, and have credible investors that you have seen before, so that we create jobs for our young people.
Do we give these opportunities to local investors or, you know, foreign investors?
I believe the president was in Tanzania as I finish. Do you know what the president said? Our good president, Dr. William Ruto? He said that he acknowledges that Tanzania has advanced in terms of economic opportunities. And here are investors, some of them are coming from Tanzania. You reject them. Some of them are coming from India. You reject them. I want to ask our people, as we consider our local investors, if there is a foreign investor that has demonstrated in 10 African countries, or for example, 5, 6, 7, give them opportunity to create jobs for as long as our locals don't lose jobs, for as long as our locals get those jobs.
Did you support Adani?
No, I'm not saying I supported Adani, but I'm saying I am giving an example. And I gave an example.
No, they might have demonstrated, you know, they have a good relations in different parts of the country, but, you know, one just a bad relation and
exactly
gets to win that.
That one is what we call credibility issues. If that person has credibility issues, don't touch. But those with credibility issues, give the opportunity.
I'm really sorry that I haven't really given you an opportunity.
It's not in very good point that I want to deal with.
Let me take a break. When we come back, I'm giving you an opportunity to respond as we head over to what exactly is happening as far as the president is concerned and what he actually spoke about in Taita Taveta. We take a break here on New Dawn. We'll be back in a few.
The biggest reggae and rhythm show ever on Kenyan television.
You have a ganja man and you wanna forget. Tell them nothing about
Juggle with the reggae boys.
Okay, you get the new clocks, the daddy.
Freeze! When we dance is sweet. The talking master MC Full Stop.
Ninja, rako shaichukuliwa ikavunjwa kama mayai.
The juggling master. Tall DJ Smash.